After the disaster from Fukushima, the government was withholding the data for the radiation levels. They had a measurement made after the disaster, but they cleaned up 5 meters around it. It looked clean, but if you go 5 meters out of it, it was still very polluted. What can we do? How can we make transparent data? Some people can donate time, and some people make systems, some people don't. The biggest problem is to be consistent.
Welcome to Unpacking Japan. I'm Toby, and today we welcome Rob. Rob, you're the co-founder of YR Design.
Yes.
And you're also a volunteer for an organization called Safecast.org, which provides a lot of data on the environment for free for everyone who wants to understand better what's going on out there. Thank you so much for coming today, all the way from Nara Prefecture, nearby Osaka. But as I understand, you live deep down in the mountains there.
Yeah.
And there's a reason for that. So we're going to get to this in a moment.
Later.
But let's rewind a little bit and hear your story. What brought you to Japan, which I believe was 1991?
Yeah, something like that. It's a kind of long story, but basically it comes down to I was studying modern dance in New York, half a day dancing, but also half a day doing engineering work for a small video company. And when the boss, she was wonderful. There was a Japanese woman, and her husband was also a wonderful man. I mean, an American journalist. And they were an amazing couple. And they had a small company, that half profit and half non-profit. So the profit side was supporting the non-profit, and the non-profit was supporting the profit side. So they had a very nice setup. But Keiko was an amazing woman. She still is an amazing woman. And I became very close to her and started to know the Japanese way of doing things. And it was very interesting because her mother was also living with them. And the daughter was also, from Keiko, was also there. So at 3 generations woman, the mother didn't speak any English, only Japanese. Keiko spoke Japanese and English. And the daughter didn't speak any Japanese.
Wow.
So he had 3 generations of women and all different cultures growing up. And it makes me just interested in Japan. And at the same time, I was dancing with Japanese performers. And they were amazing. I had one Japanese for a performance. He would hardly eat for 2 weeks before the performance. Only garlic soup.
Garlic soup.
And when he was performing, it was amazing. He was so concentrated, only on the movement and everything. It's like, I have to go to Japan.
So you kind of met this Japanese community in New York while you were studying dancing. Yes. But you were also saying that you started working for this non-profit company with your engineering background, right? What exactly were you doing there that kind of then led you to do this here in Japan?
I don't know if that's a correct question, but when I told them I want to go to Japan, they supplied me with a list of 200 companies, and one of the companies, the first one on the list, was a small company, and they did work for NHK, and they needed some technical person. So I did the interview with them, but I told them in the beginning, I don't want to work full time. So they told me, so that's fine if you don't want to work full time. Because I said I want to do my own project myself. And they said, but your salary will be very low. I said, that's fine. After 3 months, they tripled my salary and they said, you can stay, you can do what you want. So I started up a computer graphic department. I've always been interested in computer graphics. And I did also computer graphics in New York. I mean, it was, even in Amsterdam. My first computer graphics was in VIC-20, and I wrote the basic code to peek and poke directly into video memory. And that was for a theater play from a good friend of mine.
Okay.
She needed graphics. She wanted to be, that time, top of the line, or at least something new. So we were making graphics for Plato and Socrates and all this.
So you get this list of companies and you get to start working on a project for NHK, basically.
Yeah, kind of. And what I did is I built a studio for them, a sound studio. And there were many interesting combinations because the Japanese worked in a certain way. And I kind of adapt to, let's see what they want and how we can adjust it to what they want. And also, at the same time, knowing my technical background, it can be done like that.
Your first contact was with this Japanese community in New York.
Yes.
And you got interested in the culture, and then you moved here. What was it like for you when you actually arrived and you were in Japan, which was in the 90s, so kind of the peak of the Japan economy just before the bubble, and a very different Japan than today?
For me, it was amazing. When I arrived there, I didn't have any contact except the list. But a friend of a friend said, they pick you up from the airport. Friends of friends, I have no idea what they are. So we met at the airport. We stayed there for 6 months, me and my partner, in a small apartment with 4 cats. I think it's an 8 tatami apartment in Kita-Senju, that area. And wonderful. So, I mean, the couple, she was a model and he was a photographer. And they became very close friends. And first, just meet them at the airport. They know where you are. They're friends of friends. And then everything worked out okay.
No smartphones back then to quickly call or send a message to anyone. You just basically rely on trust.
Yes, rely on trust. Amazing.
You start working here, you build sound studios, and you start your own projects on the side. At what point do you kind of decide, I want to stay here long term?
I don't know. I don't know if I want to stay long term or short term. I mean, I'm on this earth for a while, and I better enjoy it. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We don't know. We think we know. But
so you just took it one day at a time, and you start one project, and then the next one
comes and goes. And
you worked for some big companies here in the electronics division. So you worked on this project for NHK, but also for NEC and Takada. These are, especially back then, they were like these kind of big conglomerates. Can you share your experience a little bit, kind of entering this typical Japanese work culture and how they were operating? What was it like?
For me, it was more like I got introduced to them by the company where I worked for, because they had many relations already, and they needed graphics, computer graphics. So I made, for example, for Takeda, Pharmacia, I made computer graphics for a heart attack. Studied a lot of for the heart, so I bought big hearts, opened them up, see how they look inside, and make the computer graphics for it. But the problem was, it was too real. They said, we cannot use it. Please make it simple.
Why? Because
it was too real. It looks too realistic. They didn't want that, because for people it's like gross. They don't want to buy the product. And for other things, for example, when I was building the sound studio, they needed video studio. They needed subtitling, and the subtitling hardware was quite old. So what I did is I speeded up 6 times, because my technical skills, I can make it much faster. They were so happy, the company, they said, we should talk to Sony about it. So I had a conversation with Sony, and Sony said, sorry, we are very much interested, but we don't want to buy it. But here is our list of our clients. They are unhappy with the machine because it's too slow. If you can go to them and speed them up, that would be wonderful. Because they had another machine coming up, and if the client was happy with Sony products and the service they delivered, they would sell the next product to them.
So unlike most people that kind of come here and maybe work for one company and stay there a long time, you kind of found your way through contact, through making various projects here and there to kind of go through all of these big names.
Yes, I can see.
Is this how you eventually kind of came to the conclusion of creating your own design company, YR Design?
No,
not at all.
It's a completely different story, because I met my current partner. She's wonderful, and we wanted to work together. So we decided, why don't we make a small, let's say, collaboration, not a real company, and then we call it YR Design. Officially, we're not a company.
Okay.
So we are on freelance collaboration.
And this came when?
This came about 15 years ago.
So you had like quite a bit of experience of just working through different things before you started.
Yes. I worked for the Dutch embassy, did projects there with them, and another big companies I did.
How did you kind of decide then to establish yourself here? I feel like you have this very loose path and you find your way here through Japan, and now you are in Nara prefecture where you've been established for a long time. You have this collaboration YR design and you work a lot on Safecast. So you have found a moment where you wanted to settle.
I don't know, settling. I mean, that's the way things go, and tomorrow can be another place. And this is the current project is one of the biggest projects Yuka and me are doing. It's the house project, to building a floating house that is easy to build yourself and can withstand flooding. It can withstand typhoons, will not fly away, and it can last for about 1,000 years.
So this house project you're doing is kind of what brought you to Nara as well, or rather,
yes.
Nara is where you've decided to start this project.
I didn't decide it. Yuka and my cat decided to do that. Yuka, we used to live in Fukushima. We were building a data center, and we figured out that is after the Fukushima disaster, and we decided that we should live as far as possible from the nuclear power plants. And so we did triangulation, and then we found out, or Yuka found out, that Nara would be a good place. Sony-Koken is kind of most far away from any nuclear power plants. Also, it's 500 meters up, so tsunamis will be hard to get there. They could get there, but
500 meters is pretty high up.
The highest tsunami, I think, is 800 meters. Yes,
but not of recent history.
Yes, in Norway.
Oh.
In the fjord. They went up 800 meters. But only a very limited area.
So you find this place and you decide to buy this house.
I didn't buy a house at all.
No, to build, sorry. Can you explain a little bit more the concept of your house that you're building there?
The concept of the house is to build a sustainable dwelling that can be, how would you say that would last a very long time. And simple to construct, and self-supporting, and basically living in isolation.
So kind of completely autonomous.
Yes, and currently we are independent of water, independent of electricity, and no sewage using. We use our own sawdust toilet, so we get sawdust from the local mill, and we have a bucket with sawdust, and then we do a humor in there, and that goes into another bucket outside for about 3 years, stays in the bucket, and then we use it on our land for fertilizer.
For building such an autonomous system in-house, where do you even start? I'm sure there's other people that are having this dream maybe of being not connected, or like being a bit more off-grid. Where do you start when you want to design this?
You start with an idea, what you want. And basically we went with a tent in our car. We have an old Jeep Cherokee. I modified to make it a little bit more comfortable for us. And then you start with a tent and an idea. So we did research on the materials. We ordered the materials in a container from XPS from China, because they could deliver XPS that's very strong. It's used for tarmacs from airplanes, airfields. And that's a very high compression rate, so we don't need an internal structure for the house. The walls are supporting the whole structure.
Okay.
It's a very simple construction. We tried it out. That was the hardest part. 6 months of trying all different materials. It was easy to make, easy to... The mortar was the most important problem, because we didn't want to use chemicals. We just want to use cement, water, and sand. That's all we want to use. So we have to find the right mixture. But luckily, I was working at Universal Studio. I was doing their IT for setting up for the creative department. I would set up a data system for them. And their I met a guy who did the Jurassic Park, the concrete.
Mm-hmm.
He knows everything about concrete. Amazing. He said, his advice to me was, just try it. Get some cement, get some water, get some sand, mix them together, and see what fits and what works. So we did it, and after a while, we could find the right mortar. And then the reason we needed the mortar is the XPS will break down in sunlight. And if the house is exposed too long to the sun, it will degrade slowly. We didn't want that. So we made a 5mm layer of mortar. We put it on by hand. And I can show you pictures later.
So you start with an idea, you go in with a lot of dedication and patience to live in a tent and try, fail.
Yeah.
And now you have a system that basically works in autonomy. You said you use toilets with sawdust, and you have your own water system, your own energy system with solar and wind panel.
Mm-hmm.
But before you kind of went to Nara and built that, you said you were living in Fukushima, building a data center just after the earthquake.
Yes.
Can you tell me how you got there?
We got there because it's before time we were living in Tokyo. And then on the day after the tsunami hit Fukushima, we got a call from Dutch journalists. And they asked us if we want to support them going up to the disaster area. So we went to the disaster area while the nuclear power plant was still boiling and not exploding yet. When we were there, it exploded, but we were far away already. And when we went through this experience and went back to Tokyo, we decided, and a friend of mine asked us, do you want to go to Fukushima? And do you want to help setting up a data center? And a data center in an old school, so because there are about 5,000 empty schools in Japan.
5,000 empty schools?
Yeah, empty schools, because there's not so many children anymore. They're all empty, and they're big. And he arranged some grants to to train people how to use data centers and to teach them about computers. And he had a lot of hardware from his commercial company. He used to be a banker. So he had, from 2008, he had a lot of extra hardware, or leftover hardware. And so from the old hardware, we hacked a whole data center together. It's not that big, but it's but good enough for people to train, to get the concept working.
So basically you get people in that area to understand what is a data center, how does it work, what goes into it.
Yeah.
And this one that you built there is still operating today.
Yeah, still operating.
You were telling me a little bit before we started camera, like the panels are just hanging in the rooms and kind of everything is just running without aircon.
Low power and no aircon. And just the wind supplied the cooling.
So I want to get a little bit now into the kind of design work as well you do with YR design. And I feel that from the various stories you've shared already, you have a sort of strong desire to do things that are like environmentally friendly and design things that take the environment into consideration when being built. So when you take that to YR design, what kind of projects do you work on? What kind of things have you been able to kind of work on?
I make computer graphics for clients, but these days most of the work goes to Safecast and volunteering for them. Sometimes there's some money, so they give me money, but I don't need so much money. So it's the salary or things that come, it's not so important.
So even with YR design, the few projects you've been working on now are mostly kind of also related to like Safecast.
Yes, mostly these days. These days we developed this. The latest development is this geiger counter we made.
So Safecast, it's an organization, non-profit.
Yeah.
Can you explain a little bit what they do and how they came to be?
They came to be after the disaster from Fukushima, and there was no data available for the radiation levels. It's not completely true. The data was available from government. And the government was withholding the data or not transparent enough. And they, for example, when we were in Fukushima, you could see this wasn't. They had a measurement made after the disaster. They had a measurement tower, but they cleaned up 5 meters around it, and then put the measurement there. So it looked clean, but if you go 5 meters out of it, it was still very polluted.
Okay.
So and they used it as a reference. So I think Safecast was right. It was not clear. There was no data available. So Safecast came up with the idea to. I should first explain about Safecast. Safecast came together with Ray Ossie. He used to be CTO for Microsoft, with other people like from different kind of organizations, and Joe Ito also from MIT is part of the Safecast team. There are many more people, but they sit together and they say, what can we do? How can we make transparent data and build a system on that? So they come together, and then some hackers from Tokyo Hacker Group, they came up with the first hardware the design, very simple, and they just could drive around with a car and collect the radiation data. They put it on an SD card, and then they upload it to a server so people could see what the levels were. At the moment, we have about 230 million data points collected. We have a lot of volunteers. They're driving around. But most of Japan these days is mapped.
So Safecast is an organization that came together after the Fukushima disaster,
Yep.
and the goal was provide an alternative source of data that is not the government on radioactive levels, specifically in Fukushima at the beginning.
Yes, that's correct.
And the way to do that was by creating a device that could capture this and then uploading this data for free to a server where everyone could just see what the levels were in the area that the Safecast team just went through.
Yeah, and also the whole data chain is transparent. So the code, the hardware code, software code, and the hardware are all open source. So the whole chain of data is transparent. Even at the end, it's transparent.
So how did you kind of first join Safecast, and in what capacity?
That was because when I was living in Tokyo, a good friend of mine, his name is Peter Frank. He is one of the founders from Safecast too, and he asked me to go, when I was going up with the journalist, to check on his family-in-law how they were doing in Fukushima, because they didn't hear anything from them, because there was no communication at the time. So when I was there with the journalist, I went to visit his mother-in-law and his other family members, and reported back, so we could call them up and say, yeah, they are okay. And while we were, the journalists were shooting at the same time. So when I brought the grandma on my back through the waters, they were recording it.
Oh, so there's footage of you carrying the grandma through the flooded waters of Fukushima.
They were sitting on my back. She was sitting on my back, and I was wading through the water to bring her to safe areas. They had a temple, so she wanted to go to the temple to take care of things.
So that's your first contact with Safecast.
Safecast.
And then they kind of hear about your background in electrical engineering, and kind of you start helping out with developing these geiger measurements.
Yeah, in the beginning not, because I was not affiliated with them. But a little bit later, when we were moving to Fukushima, then Peter asked, can you make measurements? Here you have a geiger counter, a standard geiger counter, and write down the numbers. And then slowly, at the same time in Tokyo, they were developing the systems. And then when we had the school up and running, we started to produce those devices at the school. So we were having volunteers coming in. They would do the soldering, and the team from Tokyo would come to Aizu Wakamatsu. Then we would assemble and set up the systems, and they would bring them back and distribute them to other places.
So what exactly is this device here? Can you explain a little bit what goes into it and how it works and what it does?
Basically, it's a big tube. The back, hold on a second, let me get it out. This is a tube. It measures the radiation.
Okay.
This is a high voltage power supply that gives high voltage to the tube. So if the radiation comes, it triggers an event.
Mm-hmm.
And the event is processed in this, it's called an M5 stack. It's basically an embedded microprocessor. And at the same time, it's recording the GPS location. So you have the location and the radiation data. And at the same time, it sends the data to my Wi-Fi. And then from the Wi-Fi, it goes directly into a server.
Okay.
So the data is real-time recorded.
So a pretty straightforward system, basically.
Yeah. And it has many options. You can, for example, the modifying. You can see the satellites. You can see all the satellites in the area. So you can see
Okay,
them all.
so the little dots, people probably on the camera can't see, but the display right now shows a lot of colored dots, which are all the satellites flying above Osaka right now.
Right now.
Cool.
And this, the blue ones are the ones they are valid. They are confirmed to be correct. The red ones are still in the process of being processed.
Mm-hmm. So Safecast started producing probably, I imagine, an older version of this.
Much older version, yes.
After the Fukushima disaster.
Yes.
And was mapping mostly the Fukushima area at its very beginning. What is Safecast doing today?
Today is basically still radiation data collecting, but all over the world, not only Japan. And for example, in Ukraine, we have new devices being set up there. Also, and part of Safecast is organized by Ray Ossi, and he has a company called Blues, and the Blues company, they do wireless communication. So he designed different versions of this, but basically with a solar. So independent of power, they can transmit data. And we have a few already around Chernobyl. And we are setting up many more places in Ukraine. But some locations we will not disclose the device. We randomize the data. So the device is not exactly, so it cannot be taken out by people who want to take it out.
So from mapping Fukushima to trying to map the whole world's radiation levels, basically, it's a big project, but you mentioned that Japan is now less mostly fully mapped.
Yeah.
So what's it looking like in Japan now? If we talk about the actual data, how is it in Fukushima more than 10 years after the disaster? Are the levels back to close to normal in most areas?
In some areas, yes. And we see, and you can see it on the data from Safecast, that it will go down, slowly down. And some areas are very clean because they cleaned up everything. But some areas, for example, forests, if they cut trees down, the radiation or the cesium comes out, and the cesium pollutes again. So they have to clean up again. And for example, when we were living in the school, we were burning wood in a stove. And after 2 weeks, the stove was completely radiated. I mean, it was very high level. If you put a geiger counter to it, goes because all the cesium was collected in the ashes.
So it's still a work in progress, basically.
Yes, it will take a while before everything gets cleaned up.
But for the rest of Japan, is it a country that we can call with low levels of radiations? Is it?
Yes, I mean, we make basically a base level to see what's standard. Because some areas have naturally higher radiation. For example, Hong Kong is about 5 times higher than Tokyo. It's because of the granite, the radioactive granite in there.
So the rocks around Hong Kong basically hold radiation.
They transmit radiation.
Okay.
So basically.
So the geographical location basically has an impact. It's not just necessarily having a nuclear power plant nearby or something. It's the environment where you live in.
Or a hospital, they will have many radiation. For example, that's a funny story, when we were in a party in Tokyo, suddenly we saw the geiger counters go up.
So you went to the party and you had this in your backpack. And
we saw it going up. And there was one person who just had an internal exam, and they had put radiation barium to do
the stomach testing, the barium test. Yeah,
we could measure that directly, and it's not so bad because it's only short time and it will disappear. But basically, we were very surprised. Like, why is this area so high level?
So what have been some of the big challenges to develop this on the technical side of things, of developing the tool here, the measurement tool, but also kind of putting together this big database and putting up there?
Technically, it's not a problem. The problem is more humans, because some people can donate time, some people cannot donate time, and some people make systems and they document everything correctly. Some people don't. So what should you do? What should you choose to make sustainable? So we should share all the knowledge together. Mm-hmm. But some people don't do that naturally. So the biggest problem is to be consistent, to find ways that the systems can rebuild. They can be, for example, open source is a good one, because we have all our source code is on GitHub. So people can see what we do, but also if somebody is not there, they can rebuild it from there.
So everyone has access?
Yeah, basically everyone has access, open access. And if we place them in locations, then we have to ask them permissions. But if we prefer to have a system that's where people can be replaced. The community is important. The individual is important, but if one drops out for one reason or another, it should be not a problem for the organization.
Safecast, as I understand, is an organization where members are spread all over the world.
Yes.
From its very beginnings. You mentioned someone being at MIT, someone being in Tokyo. How did it work to kind of get this all started so quickly after the Fukushima disaster, when nobody was actually really... like people were not in the same room?
They were at one point. They were kind of in the same room, but also some remotely connecting. Even these days, that for the development team for this newer model, we have weekly meetings, and we meet in a time schedule that's just okay for one in the morning, another one at night, and another one in the middle, and then we can work together.
And so now linking back to your life in Nara, you found this location that is quote-unquote radiation-free, I imagine.
No, it's not radiation-free.
But at least far from all the nuclear power plants in Japan. And you've been able to set yourself up in the mountains to work remotely on this kind of global project. What is your main kind of contribution today that you're working on to develop Safecast further?
This device. And also working on a new data structure, because the data structure is 10 years old. It's kind of, my feeling is it needs to be replaced. It's not so cheap. It's quite expensive to run. The servers need to be paid. We get a lot of donations, but donations are slowly going down.
So that kind of limits people's involvement as well, because some people just want to be involved when there's money as well.
Yeah, we cannot pay them normally. Sometimes we have some budget for certain projects, and then we can allocate money for people who want to help. But mostly it's volunteer work.
I'm now curious about the other side of this. So Safecast came out of the need for accurate data, free and available data that the government was not fully sharing at the time of the disaster. Maybe they had their own reasons, maybe they had their own procedures they had to follow and were not allowed to disclose. For whatever reason, that data was not available to the public. How was it then when you guys started having that data, sharing it for free, and kind of in some situations, I imagine, contradicting what the government was saying?
As far as I know, we didn't have so much feedback from the government.
Okay.
We had more feedback from TEPCO and the companies. They were first were very hesitated. But when the International Atomic Energy Group saw the Safecast data and they wanted to work with the data, and then they kind of mediate between the TEPCO and Safecast. And finally, we were able to go into the nuclear power plants and to measure there ourselves. In the beginning, they were really, you cannot go in.
Yeah, they wanted to keep their things kind of private and secluded. Yeah. But once they saw, I mean, this data is valuable, right? It's for helping humans. It's not about profit.
No, not at all.
It's just about having the right data.
Yeah.
So the International Atomic Committee kind of helped to mediate, and then
and also other institutes. I think that finally the TEPCO said, you can go ahead and you can follow. And
So
we have some nuclear experts in our team too. They really they know a lot about radiation before the Fukushima already.
does it mean that today, now that Safecast has been around for such a long time, you're able to kind of collaborate upfront with government agencies or nuclear companies to kind of develop better networks, develop better data structures, so that overall we can live kind of in more safe environment?
I hope so. I think, for example, in Ukraine, we found out that it's much more easier. The government accepts Safecast ideas, and there we can start up other groups inside, or we team up with other groups inside, for example, in Ukraine, and then we collaborate because we exchange data. But the other way around too. For example, in Chernobyl, when there was a Fukushima accident, the people from Chernobyl helped a lot for Safecast too, to supply information, see what you need and what to expect and how to process the data.
Because they had all the experience.
They had a lot of experience in the disaster before the Fukushima disaster. So we shared that, and also there were people who are generally generous, donating their hardware. We got a lot of inspectors, they call them geiger counters, from Medcom. And one person very concerned about Chernobyl and about Fukushima. His name is Dan Seif. He is the owner of Medcom, and he was amazing. He's very generous and always willing to give us information what we needed.
So what's next now for Safecast? Are there plans to, for example, develop this Geiger meter further to maybe not only be a Geiger meter, but kind of be able to measure different kind of data? Because if you start having these in different locations around the world, you could measure levels for, I don't know what.
No, we already have an air project, and some part is already developed completely, so we can just buy a unit, put it on your house, and it's solar powered, and it sends the data directly. You don't have to do anything on it, and it measures the air quality.
Okay.
And future versions like this is going to be like wireless directly with 3G or satellite versions. In my house, I'm experimenting with satellite directly upload, so that way you can go anywhere, because now you're still depending on cell towers. And for example, in Ukraine, if the cell power is down, no data is being sent. That's why we're coming with satellite ideas.
So your house is not only your testing ground for your own kind of sustainable living, but also for developing new technology for Safecast.
Yeah, but not only that. I mean, it's also for me a place where I can meditate and study about life and about philosophy, and take my time and do my own things that I want to. So close to nature. If I walk 3 meters out of the house, I'm in the forest, and daily I go for 2 hours in the forest and be around with nature.
You've been in Japan now over 30 years. You've worked on many projects for big corporations around Tokyo, and you shifted towards doing more of your own projects, and now basically volunteer work for Safecast. Looking back on all of this experience and this journey, if someone is thinking about moving to Japan now, today, what kind of advice would you like to give?
Oh, I cannot give advice. It depends on the person, what they want in life. I mean, we don't know. I mean, if you work certain things and you push too hard, you will not get it. If you don't push so hard, and it comes. I mean, it's a balance between those two, what you want and what you get.
So do you have already projects for yourself that you're working on kind of for the next few years, whether it's for your house or? No?
Every day is a project.
Every day
is a project in communication and about being related to the environment and how my body works and how my inner and outer life is, the inner life, and how I develop myself, how I learn my brain, how to learn, and all these kind of things. And
so a journey of self-reflection.
It's not only self-reflection, it's more than that, I think. It's an enjoying the way life comes.
Early on in our conversation, you talked about this Japanese community in New York, and that they were doing some things differently than what you had experienced so far, and that you wanted to see what it's really like in Japan.
Yeah.
So now you've been here for so long. Do you feel like you've found that same kind of community you met in New York here in Japan? Do you feel like you've discovered completely different things that were not expected?
Oh, yes. I didn't expect anything. But the community in New York told me, you'll be back in 6 months. But I'm still here after 35 years. It was completely different society I found here. I mean, the people are not like the people that were escaped from Japan because they didn't like the rigid social structure. And they went to New York and other places and to develop themselves. But in my case, when I came here, I just have to adjust to the social norms and try to fit in and don't push myself too much. And then I have much more freedom. Like, for example, the way I can build a house myself. I mean, I don't have an architectural background, but I can still build my house. And I can do what I want, basically. I have to respect my neighbors. I shouldn't pollute the river, for example, because I take water out of the river, but I don't put water back. I clean it up before I put it in the ground.
More freedom in Japan. And
for me, it's more free. It's amazing free. And to be independent, I can allocate my time the way I want. Of course, I need to survive economically, but those things seem to come so far.
You have been here 35 years. That's longer than most foreigners who live here. How have you seen the society change from when you arrived in your early days in Tokyo to the society you're interacting with today? What are some of the maybe biggest things that...
I've been in different places and I've met different people, so I don't know if I can say this is a reference, that it is different. The good thing is that the communication and the sharing of information is much easier now. I mean, when I came here, there was no internet. There was just internet, let's say this way. And now it's so easy. You can just Skype all over the world or Zoom meetings. It's very easy. Before that, it was completely more isolated. Now it's much more open, at least from my point of view. And the way people use their technology around them, it's also changing, I think. Even the farmers, they get up the phone and they type in certain things. And for example, a few days ago, I met a teacher, a high school teacher, and he had no idea about technology. And then I showed him the geiger counter, and he said, "Oh, that's interesting." And then he started to get interested in radiation. And I explained to him what to do and how to do. And then he understood, because I think if I was 10 years ago, he would have never understand it. But now, because there's so much information available because of the internet and about sharing information in the society, people know.
So the more information is available, the easier it is to communicate.
Not only easier to communicate, but easier to share information, I think we should take more steps up in that direction. For example, if you see the AI coming now, it's quite interesting. About 15 years ago, I did take courses with Jeffrey Hilton and with Andrew Ng. At that time, they just had a simple course, and I could see the AI coming. I mean, it's on the horizon. And after AI, we will have another version of ourselves, I think. Finally, we don't need our bodies anymore. And that's a whole different story.
Yeah, we could go on into a long tangent, I think,
yes.
The impact of AI. But perhaps there will be a lot of opportunities for Safecast with AI, or maybe to implement AI in your house development.
Yeah, house development, I don't know if you need AI, but for Safecast, surely, because a lot of work is still done manually. And if we have a model for doing the manual work for people, they don't have to do it anymore. It's much easier.
Saves time.
Yeah, not only saves time, but it means saves resources, so the time can be allocated to other things that are important.
Yeah, certainly like an interesting journey you've had.
Life is an interesting journey.
I really feel like from hearing your story and all the stories you're sharing, I imagine a sort of, how do you call them in English? In the old arcades, you pull the ball, it flies, and then it bounces all around.
Ping pong.
And your life has been kind of this kind of journey all over the place.
Yeah, there's some big bells to a boom.
Exactly, right? You meet one person, they send you to Fukushima, and then you meet the other person, send you to... Very interesting. I'm fascinated by the fact that you're able to do all of this from that house in the mountains in Nara.
Yes, you should see this morning, for example, I went to the post office, and the post office, they know me now. So local post office, I prefer the local post office, they send them out. They send them all out all over the world. So I come there with my package, I have a whole list, and we have a whole system together we built. But the first time I came, they were very skeptical. What kind of devices are you sending out? Radiation? Ooh, dangerous. We cannot do that. I said, there is no radiation. It measures the radiation. And another package came from Fukushima. I said, radiated. I can show you it's not radiated. It's clean. So then I showed them a project that Safecast did. That the post office, the postman, was driving around with their motorbikes, and they had one strapped on the back of the car, of the motorbike. They were measuring radiation, and they were sending it to Safecast. So there was a connection for that small post office. They say the post office in Fukushima was supplying data for this project. And they said, wow, I had the video and I could show them. And they said, oh, we want to help you. How can we help you?
How many of these are in operation right now?
This particular device, the new device, is about 60. But in total, we have about 300. 300 fixed. And we have about 3,000 mobile at the moment.
Cool.
So they're getting more and more.
We covered quite a few different topics already, from your journey to Japan, your early days, and the important work you do at Safecast. Mm-hmm. We'll make sure to share all of these in the description. But do you feel like there are some aspects of your life in Japan or your work at Safecast or your sustainable housing that we haven't really covered that are important for our listeners to kind of hear about?
I don't know. I think there are many more things, but I think we got most of it covered.
Thank you, Rob,
for
taking your time and coming all the way here to Osaka to share your story.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly a very unique one. And I'm sure that you have so many more small anecdotes to share, but we would be spending a long time to go through them all. We'll make sure to send people your way if they have more questions about Safecast and what you do, and if they're interested in maybe helping out on this project, which is helping us all out. Mm-hmm. Thank you everyone for listening and watching. This was Unpacking Japan, and we'll be back again next week. Bye. Are you looking for another podcast episode to listen to next? If you like the one you just listened to, I'm sure you'll also enjoy the one that I've selected and linked in the description down below. Go check it out.